everyone, and thank you for attending our roundtable presentation titled Researching and Restoring Justice, a Letter from the Editors. This roundtable seeks to explore the perspectives of non-traditional editors of a writing center journal aimed at amplifying the work and profiles of tutors, graduate students, and emergent scholars, and women, people of color, translingual speakers, and those identifying with other groups underrepresented within the field of writing center/studies discipline specifically. This roundtable will therefore consist of the members of the Special Issues editorial team elaborating upon their perspectives and experiences. This includes, but is not limited to, information explaining the journey and process of reading and giving feedback to proposals, selecting proposals to be published, and participating in the launch of the journal's special issue. This roundtable will provide the audience with an overview of why this call is integral in the field as well as current events, who the editors, reviewers, copy editors are, which is important in understanding the exigency of the call, as well as a preview to the scholarly work that is engaged within this special issue. Before we begin our presentation, we want to take a moment to introduce ourselves. My name is Morgan Banville, and I'm a second-year PhD student in Rhetoric, Writing, and Professional Communications at East Carolina University.
My name is Danae Dibral, and I am a lecturer at University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley.
And my name is Laura Gonzalez, and I'm a lecturer at Texas A&M University, Kingsville.
In order to align with our mission to include perspectives of non-traditional scholars within the field, our presentation includes audio and video recordings of some of the voices who have assisted with the process of creating the peer-reviewed special issue journal, Researching and Restoring Justice in Writing Centers. We hope that by including these voices that may not have had the opportunity during an in-person conference, we can provide viewers with a better sense of the contributions to the field, as well as our holistic approach to create a more inclusive platform. We want to thank those who have had a hand in this process of creating a special issue journal, as well as those who have graciously taken time to be a part of this presentation. As two Latinx and a white woman, we acknowledge our privilege. As non-tenure faculty members, one graduate student, and two lecturers, we also acknowledge that we would not usually be given these opportunities to partake in the creation of a journal. We would like to balance the privilege that we do have by promoting the conversations and research that the scholars within the special issue are having. First, we will hear from Dr. Elizabeth Buck, one of the original editors of this issue.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Buck, and I'm currently an assistant professor of English and Communication and the director of the Multiliteracy and Communication Center at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. I wanted to talk a little bit about how I got involved with this project. When Monty, who's the other mentor co-editor, and I had talked about putting something together that forefronted social justice research in writing centers, it came to pass that there was an opportunity to do a special issue of the peer review journal. This was a journal that I had worked with before, so it really ended up being a great fit that the peer review was interested in hosting this special issue, especially because they also publish open access and multimodal work, which are two things that really matter to me a lot as a scholar. So we originally put out the call for papers for this special issue, Researching and Restoring Justice in Writing Centers, about the time of the IWCA conference in October of 2019. So we talked to a couple people about it there. We also were trying to find graduate students, undergraduate tutors, people that we've worked with in the past to kind of join us on this special issue. And then we started reviewing pieces for the journal in about February, March 2020. But as we were going through this process and coming up with the best ways to have our objectives for the issue manifest, we sort of realized, Monty and I, that to really forefront the goals for the issue, which is to promote underrepresented voices in writing centers, that as white tenure track faculty members, it really shouldn't be our names on this special issue. And so we ultimately recruited the three members of the editorial team to take over the rest of the process for putting together this special issue. And we kind of just said, hey, we'll be here for whatever you need. Feel free to contact us anytime. But we kind of handed over the reins, which is a terrible metaphor, to the three of them. So we're really thinking about ways that we can encourage other people to engage in this kind of work, to really think about how we can remove some of those hegemonic barriers to academic publication that perpetuate, particularly in editorial relationships. Hopefully, Monty and I will be putting something together in the future, kind of describing what we did, and to encourage other people to do this too. But I just want to say I am so proud of the three co-editors of the special issue. So I can't wait to see this special issue come out, and I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to have been involved.
Since the call for proposals for this special issue is titled Researching and Restoring Justice in Writing Centers, and it aims to amplify the work and profiles of tutors, graduate students, underrepresented groups, and emergent scholars, we decided that the best way to include such work was not only from the authors, but also from those who worked within the making of the special issue. From the IWCA program that was passed out in Columbus, Ohio in 2019, Elizabeth and Monty recruited me at the conference to assist them with recruiting authors for their new call for proposals. I sifted through hundreds of abstracts from the program to find authors that may potentially fit the call for the special issue. Once I created an Excel sheet, I drafted a template for an email to send out to each individual person, informing them of our call for papers in the hopes that they would become a part of the conference to publication pipeline. Part of recruiting authors meant specifically targeting those based on their abstracts who may be historically underrepresented. Those include voices such as males. Historically, there are more females within Writing Center studies, people of color, as well as those who identify as LGBTQ+. Monty and Elizabeth recruited several graduate and undergraduate students and lecturers to review proposals for the special issue. The three of us were included in this group. For the initial 500-word proposals, we were partnered up to sift through and rate them on a scale of 1 to 4. After the proposals were accepted or declined, Elizabeth and Monty invited all of the proposal reviewers to join the editorial team. The three of us agreed to complete this project in spring, summer, and into fall of 2020. We met to discuss what this event meant. This was new to the three of us, and this is typically a role we would not even have access to. We decided as a trio on deadlines and how to delegate work between us. Once we had the manuscripts, the task of providing feedback was daunting, especially for graduate students and 2 lecturers who have already full-time commitments, but are working as part of commitment to the field of Writing Center studies. We reached out to see if any of the proposal reviewers would be interested in helping read and give feedback on a select number of manuscripts to also amplify voices and experiences that contributed to all aspects of the issue process. Because this special issue is multimodal, all of the manuscripts are required to have some sort of multimodal component. Our intention with this was to include non-traditional article submissions instead of text-based that were more accessible and diverse in their outreach. Within this special issue, readers will hear from authors challenging the norms of writing centers. This includes work from researchers who discuss inviting students cultural English into the writing classroom with the help of code meshing workshops provided by Writing Center tutors. Authors who describe socially just practices for hiring, training, and outreach initiatives, accessibility statements in writing centers, the importance of multimodality within the center, as well as the use of mentorship theory to inform and develop actionable ways to bring diverse student voices to the forefront of Writing Center leadership. The special issue also includes a musical accompaniment, examining how peer-to-peer writing centers can help bridge the divide for marginalized students, an overview of potential and existing applications of bilingualism, multilingualism, and translingualism in tutoring sessions, as well as a womanist approach to anti-racist, racially just Writing Center administration. Overall, this issue seeks to challenge who best practices in the discipline we're created for and who they serve, and this preview only begins to highlight the important work that is amplified within this special issue.
Hi, my name is Sarah Murphy, and I was one of the graduate students who helped work on this special issue for TPR. I reviewed some of the initial proposals that writers sent in, and I helped give them feedback on their work. And then in the later stages, I helped read some of the original articles and provided some feedback to those writers as well. One of my favorite things about working on this project was that I really got to read a lot of literature on a subject that I'm very interested in, and I really enjoyed being able to work with these writers and being able to provide my own knowledge on it and help them strengthen their pieces. And ultimately, I think it was a really great experience, and I'm really glad that I got to be part of the team.
Sarah was part of reviewing the proposals and then also stepped into review and gave feedback to a few manuscripts. The team of 3 editors and Sarah reviewed the initial manuscripts, provided feedback, and gave final decisions. The next step in the process of creating the special issue was copy editing. Once again, our process for inviting and selecting copy editors was not following the traditional format. We reached out to people who we thought could provide the copy edits and who, during COVID, would have the capacity to engage with this work.
Hi, my name is Mia Jones, and I had the pleasure of editing for TPR. I actually was a student at East Carolina University, and I worked at the University Writing Center for about 1.5 years. So I have a little bit of experience with the Writing Center and the process and being a consultant. The 2 types of writing that I was editing, it was 2 different they had 2 different styles, 2 different tones, and for each paper it really worked to present the information that they had. I really enjoyed working with those writers and editing the papers because they, like I said, they were interesting read and very informative. With that being said, they use different aspects to bring that information out to the people that are reading it, the audience. So whether that was commentary or whether that was charts and pictures or whether it was just presenting information, it was in a very understandable way, and that anybody who either works in the field, who is an undergrad, who's a grad student, like anybody will be able to read it and understand it and actually find it kind of interesting. So I enjoyed working with the TPR writers and editing their papers.
This whole process invited and involved students and scholars from a variety of backgrounds. However, all the copy editors were graduate students from 2 universities, East Carolina University and the University of Massachusetts Dartmouth.
I was involved in the copy editing process of the special edition of the peer review. I enjoyed spending time closely reading and rereading this new research about social justice. The concepts these articles addressed, the questions asked, and the suggestions for future work presented made me consider how I can incorporate these ideas into my own work at a writing center and what, collectively, our writing center can do to address and interact with these concerns. I also know that the recurring concepts in these articles, including accessibility, equity, and inclusivity, will grow more involved in my teaching as well as in my research. It was wonderful to see such thoughtful scholarship that is happening around the country. This work really reinforces that these concepts are valuable and needed in our writing centers and communication spaces today. I'm very grateful for helping to play a part in sharing this important research.
Overall, the actual process of getting this whole issue out involved many scholars in the field who may not usually have been given these types of opportunities. From the scholars who submitted manuscripts to the proposal reviewers, to the editors, to the copy editors. Making spaces for the norm of writing centers to restore justice is the mission of this special issue.
The way academic journals traditionally function involves a team of editorial staff of tenured track faculty who review, give feedback, and decide on the acceptance of journal proposals. Thinking about the type of process this traditional route gives power to, who it privileges, and how those who aren't in the designated positions may feel about research in academia, we argue that it does not give the same access to everyone and instead excludes proposals and people. As Garcia recognizes, writing centers function within a tapestry of social structures reproducing and generating systems of privilege, which we cannot deny is also how journals and academia work holistically. As participants in the creation of an online special issue journal in the field of writing center studies, we are attempting to disrupt this norm. The original editors of the special issue journal gathered a group of lecturers, graduate students, and undergraduate students to serve as a team of editors and reviewers. The goal for this special issue was simple: to amplify the voices, work, and profiles of tutors and all emergent scholars, undergraduate and graduate students alike, including women, people of color, translingual speakers, and those identifying with other groups underrepresented within the discipline. By amplifying voices both in the work towards the issue and the work within the issue, we aim to confront gatekeepers and to use the privilege and space we have to call attention to current issues and make space for others to share their research and experience. This issue of the peer review, Researching and Restoring Justice in the Writing Centers, centered around just that: the idea of what it means to restore justice in the Writing Center, what justice in the Writing Center really looks like, and how justice is shaped in writing centers and institutions. These articles would help to move away from showcasing writing center work as work that is white, heteronormative, monolingual, and able-bodied. This work would ultimately help shift towards writing centers and institutions that are more welcoming and inclusive of all writers. By taking on these roles as special issue editors, we were stepping into a space that we wouldn't have otherwise been a part of. We were able to create our space with this space that we were given. And as graduate students and non-tenure track lecturers, we were welcomed in the space much like all the students should be welcomed in the Writing Center. Gretchen McKinney talks about what it means to be welcoming in the Writing Center. She mentions the idea of a welcoming writing center has always been associated with a physical space, making a writing center feel cozy and comfortable and much like home. However, she also points out that home isn't the same for everyone. Home is often cultural and doesn't necessarily provide the same type of comfort for everyone. Gretch McKinney discusses the idea that when we create writing center culture, we must listen to our writing centers. This means considering the workings of our own writing centers. Rather than creating a general space where diverse students may not be welcomed, we should create spaces where all students can be welcomed to have intellectual conversations about writing. This means taking a critical look at our writing centers and determining ways to make writing centers welcoming for all students. Working with the special issue of TPR has allowed us to work with scholars whose goal it is to serve justice in the Writing Center, particularly in diversifying the Writing Center. Being able to have this opportunity to work with the special issue of TPR as emerging scholars ourselves has allowed us to feel welcome in this field of scholarship.
Lastly, this section addresses the time frame for the journal and why announcing the release of the special issue during this conference will have a holistic impact on the field, as well as those who read and engage with the issue. The whole process for this issue began last December, almost a year ago. We reviewed proposals in early 2020, we extended deadlines for manuscripts because of COVID, and now we're here with an actual journal issue about writing centers reviewed, edited, and composed by people who don't usually get these experiences. We decided, with the encouragement of Monty, that the release of this special issue should coincide with this conference, NCPTW, because this conference, especially because of its virtual platform, brings together people who work in and care about writing centers. It is the goal of those who read and engage with this multimodal special issue will further their ideas about the power of writing centers and start to challenge the norm of current writing centers and scholarship, as well as what it means to publish in the discipline. With this special issue, the manuscripts and the process of how it was created, edited, and published, we hope to begin working with a new way of thinking about justice. We hope this roundtable has given examples of how this type of work can be meaningful, accessible, and beneficial to those not usually given these opportunities or responsibilities. With this issue and this roundtable, we hope to explore and showcase ways of doing scholarship and writing centers that challenge the current norm. We hope to empower all scholars in this community who traditionally don't have space, including undergraduate students, graduate students, BIPOC, and LGBTQ+ scholars that continue sharing their ways of making knowledge and of making these spaces accessible. We hope to show that those with space right now can use their privilege to make space for others.
We began this project as a way to leverage opportunities, networks, and privileges that we benefit from in order to push the disciplinary conversation in a direction that highlighted research methods based on theories of anti-racism and social justice, and provide a platform for new and emergent scholars to learn about publication and the decision-making processes involved therein. Eventually, we came to realize that for this to work, we had to let go. Paraphrasing one of our own peer mentors told us, this work wouldn't be decolonizing if it still prominently involved us. And so we had to trust the people we were working with and trust our own abilities as mentors. This required intentional efforts to hold ourselves accountable, which we were working towards by soliciting critical feedback from our own peer mentors, scholars specializing in anti-racism, translanguaging, decolonial rhetoric, and mentorship. Based on that feedback, we have taken more advisory roles, providing support and direction as needed, but removing ourselves from any authoritative or formally recognized role. Looking ahead, we are documenting our work so we could share our experiences with other professionals to replicate and improve upon. We've negotiated with the current TPR editorial board to have the special issue team of editors invite in and become the mentors for the next special issue editorial team. That's how knowledge is created, by folding more people into the process, stepping aside so that conversations outside the main editorial group, allowing for things to happen that may not have happened under our guidance, and creating the space for others to create their own space.
If you enjoyed hearing about the process of creating our special issue, the peer review is interested in the creation of another special issue. The work these authors have done is both kairotic as well as progressive in the field of writing center studies. Topics for special issues should be just as kairotic as possible and offer a publication opportunity not currently available among the other journals in the field. Our mission at TPR is to include underrepresented voices and emerging scholars first and foremost. We would enjoy hearing from undergraduate and graduate students, for example, and look for proposals that engage such scholars as well as the curation of new resources, especially multimodal resources. It may even be a CFP that challenges the types of labor that is necessary in a writing center, especially now. This is an opportunity to invite the writing center community to craft texts that may not be standard in academic publishing, consider interviews, multimodality, and more. Please pass on this proposal. We look forward to reading a new CFP. Thank you for attending our roundtable discussion. In an effort to come full circle and continue to include voices in this presentation other than our own, we pre-recorded our video and sent out the YouTube link through the W Center listserv, as well as our personal social media accounts, such as Facebook and Twitter. We also sent the video to the special issues authors. We reached out to the Writing Center community to encourage them to watch the presentation and send us any questions they had after watching. One of the questions was about how to create a journal special issue as well as keep track of issue submissions. Because this issue was not part of the blind review process, it was helpful to be able to discuss with one another and make decisions about each manuscript. For example, I created an Excel sheet based on the template that my position as the graduate co-editor of the peer review afforded me access to. This Excel document included a specific number for the manuscript. This was useful for consistent labeling instead of sending out the author names to copy editors, for example. A column for the author's names, their contact information, the initial date the manuscript draft was submitted, when the draft was sent to reviewers, as well as the date an email was sent to the authors confirming we received the manuscript, the date reviewers were to send recommendations by, as well as the date we received the reviews from them, any notes from both reviewers. Each manuscript was designated to reviewers, recommendations for the authors, the date sent back to authors, authors' expected resubmission date, the date the final submission was received, the date the manuscript was sent to the copy editors and which copy editor, their name, the date copy editors returned the manuscript, and finally the last two steps, the date the copy edits were sent to the authors for approval and the date the proofs were sent, showing how the articles would look on the TPR website. The process was lengthy. Consider if you were starting a special issue or would like to be published in a journal, that the timeline we started all of this was last October. And here we are a year later announcing the release of 13 incredible manuscripts.
Regarding the question of how to create a journal, we were not part of the initial process of creating the call for proposals. However, as editors of this special issue, a call for future proposals and special issues is usually a response to an exigency within the field. There is a need in writing center studies for inclusion of bodies, voices, diverse people, and so much more. Wherever you see a gap is a wonderful place to begin thinking about what others in the field could benefit learning from, as well as how your call is pushing or questioning the boundaries and what we have accepted as the norm. This future special issue may come in a non-traditional format. Perhaps it is multimodal or one of the other suggestions we have listed in the video. If you have an idea or want to brainstorm, we are here to discuss further.
One of the other questions we were asked was, aside from the process itself, what are some of the difficulties you faced? For myself, as well as Laura and Danae, time was one of the biggest difficulties, as well as our imposter syndrome and capacity. It can be a challenge to fill the shoes of some of our colleagues and the path that they have paved for us to be in this position. And it can often feel as though our inexperience in the field may lend the authors the notion that our reviews are unhelpful. Though we recognize that the authors feel far from the thoughts that creeped in during the process, it can feel at times intimidating to question, review, and collaborate with those who have been in the field longer. But this is the whole point of the issue, right? Including the voices that are often ignored, excluded, or even muffled. We struggled with taking on this challenge and relied on one another for support and advice. If we hadn't come from a place of privilege, this experience, we believe, would have been even more challenging. For example, when the events that transpired over the past year, such as COVID-19 and Black Lives Matter occurred, we had a few authors asking for extensions due to the political climate and emotional pressures that they were experiencing. Though we were in the position to grant such extensions, it made us want to call attention to the fact that if any group, such as the Black community or lower to middle working class, who are facing such turmoil, though the list certainly exceeds this, were in this position, the issue would have been very different. In fact, because the people within writing centers typically look and sound like us, our experiences with the pressures and navigation of the journal are incomparable to those underrepresented.
This goes to show how important collaboration and mentorship are in these spaces, especially when thinking about creating spaces for marginalized groups that don't have the same background and experiences. Also, it's weird to know that the work needs to be done and to be grateful to have this opportunity to do it, but to also feel simultaneously exhausted and overworked and underqualified. Being full-time lecturers, students, doesn't allot for a lot of free mental space or brain power outside of work and work requirements. With COVID-19 just to exacerbate everything, making time and energy less available, this project was inspiring and rewarding, but also just difficult to create time and energy for.
One of the biggest difficulties that I faced was really knowing that I actually could do it. So it's not often that non-tenure track faculty members are able to take part in something like this, and this is typically the work of those more like advanced scholars in the field. So being asked to come onto this, I was really worried about whether I was even someone who should be working with a special issue. So like Danae and Morgan mentioned, the imposter syndrome was definitely real because I questioned whether I should really be the one to give someone's proposal and manuscript any feedback. I just didn't feel like I was qualified. And those are always concerns that I would bring up to Dr. Monti, who had to assure me that this space was like meant for me too. He and Dr. Buck were the ones who passed the reins to us with this whole issue, which is actually not what I expected at all when Dr. Monti reached out to me. I thought we would give some feedback and then it would be over, so they had all this confidence in us that I didn't exactly have in myself. And to reiterate what Morgan and Danae mentioned, restoring justice in writing centers is not just about saying we should, but actually doing it.
We would like to conclude by taking a moment to acknowledge that Monty and Elizabeth use their positions of privilege to create space for others to have opportunities that they usually wouldn't. In order to continue challenging the current norms and include more voices in the work of our discipline, many more tenured faculty who can use their privilege to not just assign readings for marginalized scholars, but to also implement new ways of doing things and learning that can create more inclusive spaces. It is up to those who can use their privilege to create these spaces, like journals and hiring committees and department chairs, and who hold the most power in this situation. We may be preaching to the choir here, but it is important to not just hear this story and read these articles, but actually figure out what you can do to start restoring justice within writing centers and our discipline. When bringing in underrepresented groups into these conversations that typically do not involve or represent them, it's crucial to include adequate mentorship and collaborative experiences to ensure success.
We thank you so much for watching our roundtable today, and you can head over to the peerreview-iwca.org to read our special issue. Bye.
Yay.